teachers around the world. And honestly, it makes me really happy to be able to share with you all the ideas, to, of course, exchange at the end, right? And some questions. And yeah, keep learning. I think this is the best, right? So I would like to share right now my screen and to share my presentation. So improvise your teaching. It's a very exciting topic. And I would like to start, just a moment, I will put it maybe like this. I would like to start with something that really fascinates me, and I already shared this at the previous talk with British Council, Michelangelo's attitude toward his work, that the sculpture is in the stone, and the sculptor's work is to see and release it by getting rid of the excess of the material. So this really inspired me, because I really saw the parallel to what we are doing, that our classes are basically already inside of our learners. They're a huge resource for what is happening, right? They have all this raw form of their language, life experience, feelings, thoughts, stories, whatnot. And our task as teachers also to see that and to turn that into a learning experience. And I would like to today basically to expand on this idea and hopefully convey the meaning that I want to say. I noticed that in order to be able to do that, to turn all of that huge resource and amazing opportunity into a learning experience, is the attitude that less is more. I want to try to, that you can see everything nicely. Okay, maybe like this. Okay, yeah, I think this will be better. So that the less is more mindset, less materials, less control, less over preparation and all that stuff. What I notice when I talk to a lot of teachers, that they seem really like this idea, but I also notice, and in my own personal experience, that this mindset actually has its price. And the question is if we are willing to pay this price, because the price is to let go of overthinking, excessive materials, fear of making mistakes. You know, guys, we are humans and we are not machines or ChatGPT or Google. We don't know all the answers to all the questions. So I believe it's really important to give ourselves that opportunity to give that space to be able to explore together with students this language. If you don't know something, we can always Google it. We can always ask our students together, explore that. We can bring and research some specific moment for the next class. So there are so many different ways how we can deal with that. But I believe that we gotta face this fear in ourselves and deal it in a very kind and gentle way. Then there is this pressure to stick to the curriculum, especially to the teachers who, well, have a pretty rigid one, right? Yeah, then the fear of losing control, especially like the rigid one. So I don't want to lose the control. I want to ensure that I give the best quality education to my students. But, well, there are the downsides of that. I think we all know that, and it leads to a lot of stress and exhaustion and lack of emotional connection between us. So also what is important is to let go of fear of losing your authority. It kind of linked to the control moment. This was actually when I've been thinking about this, and I remember the times of the COVID, and that the COVID showed us that how much our plans, they are just like dust in the wind in most cases. So we really want to make sure that everything works. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4. But when our plan meets the reality, something happens, and a lot of things can go unplanned, and it can bring us the frustration if we are holding too tight to this mindset. Yes, we want to control everything, right? The more the better, right? So, well, that's the price. Easier said than done, I guess. And when we are able to work through these fears and to let go of all these things, we are actually more open to improvisation and to a different quality of our classes and interactions with our students, and as a consequence to the effects that we have, like effective and benefits of the learning. Of course, don't get me wrong, because I believe that some golden middle is very important here. So it's not just like everything should be unplanned, you shouldn't be completely prepared and everything. It's the dance between the two opposites. Yeah, I love this quote by Scott Thornberry that like cooking, you start off following the cookbooks faithfully until you start acquiring some reliable cooking skills and intuitions, and you can start to improvise successfully. Of course, we need these solid skills and management skills, and of course the language skills, and we keep learning, we keep honing all these moments, all the skills. But at the same time, we, I think, need to find that trust to ourselves, to our students. And I believe that we can even improvise from the very beginning of our career. We can improve, like we can have this like moments of improvisation. So it shouldn't be like completely for the whole class. It can be scary experience, right? But we can start with something really tiny, with something small, and just expand on that and see how it happens, right? So some golden middle is really important. So I would like to share with you some steps to meaningful improvisation that I noticed really worked for me, and as I talk to other different teachers. The first is tune in with yourself and be completely present, because sometimes we can come to the class and we have all these kinds of different thoughts and emotions. I don't know, like from, oh, am I a good teacher? Or is it working? Or, oh my God, I got to do my nails, you know. This can be like all these kinds, you know, of thoughts. So if we're in our heads, then it becomes really hard to connect to other people and to what's really going on right here, right now. So this is the first step that we gotta do. Yeah, be completely present with this moment at this time. Then listen to understand and put the meaning first to what our students are saying to us, what they're sharing, and encouraging everything that they're sharing, because, well, the lesson is about them, and that's exactly what they want to say, and they want to be heard and valued and seen. Then I found it really beneficial to be curious and tune in with your students and ask questions, especially from the beginning. So what makes them tick? What are their interests? What are their current needs, abilities? What transformation are they looking for? And maybe it can change over time, but these are really, really important questions, I would say, that we can explore as we go during our classes. And of course, we ask different questions about their opinions on different things, even just like starting, how was your weekend? And yeah, and the person shares, and then you just like ask a couple of follow-up questions. So it's already shows that we are interested in, and already gives this, already starts building and establishing an emotional connection between you and students. And it will, I will share this a little bit later. It's also beneficial for another one thing. I will share just like in a couple of seconds. Hold space for them, create a non-judgmental atmosphere, so your students and you. So it's not only about students, it's also about us, that we gotta create this non-judgmental atmosphere for ourselves as well. So we are free to take risks, to make mistakes, to learn from them, to explore. Of course, we don't want to affect students' learning, right? So we don't want to make mistakes and that it just leads to some, well, not really good consequences. So they, but in a lot of cases, once again, we can like confirm information and everything, and we can look it up and still explore the language together with students. Even the language, it's a dynamic process. It changes, constantly changes. So yeah. Let go of rigid control by giving our students more choice. So consult with them too. So what do you think? What would you like to have as your homework? Would you like to, I don't know, watch this or I don't know. So they, once again, it should be relevant to the students, but giving them choice is really cool, I would say. I don't know, at least in my experience. And self-direction. So they become more autonomous, more responsible for their own learning. So we're kind of giving them their fair share of responsibility. And yeah, so they become more empowered and ready to use the language, become users of this language, and explore emergent language. Emergent language is a fantastic, it's basically a heart of the Dogme ELT approach, a heart of improvisation, this exploration. And I really would like to talk about it much, much more today. So what is emergent language? I would like to share with you these examples from the webinar for Learn Your English. The webinar was called Working with Emergent Language, and it was done by Richard Chin and Danny Norrington Davis. And I believe that particular webinar, it was done with Richard Chin, but he with Danny, he wrote a book, Working with Emergent Language, and I'm like super excited to read it very, very soon. So what they propose as, I would say, a definition for emergent language. So it's not only about errors. Of course, it can be some errors, communicative breakdowns, some gaps in the knowledge of students, and also extensions, some alternative ways of producing the same meaning. Language that teachers and learners judge to be, well, in some ways new and interesting and useful to share. Questions raised by learners about some aspects of the language. So all of this and more, all of these things that just come up. We may even say that in a messy way, and as teachers, we want to usually control everything, and we don't want too messy class, and that's why I believe we just go in more linear way, you know, from this part 1, part 2, part 3. But honestly, when we start working more with emergent language, with this so-called messiness of language, I see that it's actually more logical because it's more relevant to students. In a few minutes, I will also expand on that. And it's like they remember it much more, usually much better. And here is another definition from Scott Thornberry. There was a fantastic conference last year about from the International House about future of training, I believe. And a lot of participants, they talked about emergent language a lot, and this is the definition from Scott Thornberry, that learner-initiated language that is generated in the course of meaning-focused interaction, and which is available for directed attention and or repair and potential appropriation. So what is important here? So it's learner-initiated language. So they produce something. And of course, they talk also about something that is really interesting for them. And I would say not an easy task, because it can be like a lot of such language can come up is to prioritize and to choose what to focus on, and basically help them. So they have this gap, and we help to fill out that gap, right? To reformulate, so to give some kind of assistance. And here, what is really, really important is actually the uptake of that particular repair, for example, if it is a repair. And the uptake, this is a really nice quote that I love. It's also, it was also from this conference, that uptake cannot be demonstrated by drilling or repetition of an item in tightly controlled interaction in the form of an accuracy context. So just like right away, right? So you talk with the student and you right away ask to like, and to repeat, to drill. I mean, of course, that's what we do and that's what we need to do. But the evidence of the uptake is more convincing when the learner is able to produce this item independently, and when the focus is on the meaning and fluency, so like more like general context. So for example, I believe like we all had such examples, right? When, for example, we discussed with the student some phrase or some word like acquaintance, and students in a few classes, they start producing, okay, I met an acquaintance yesterday. So it means that this word actually became a part of them, part of their vocabulary, and it means that this uptake happened, right? And of course we do it a lot of repetition, a lot of recycling to be able to ensure that. But anyway, so this uptake is what is really important when we're working with this emergent language. Let me tell you a little bit more how we can explore this emergent language. It's a very active process. That's why I'm always so amused when I don't know, sometimes teachers can say that, I don't know, Dogme ELT is for lazy teachers, but honestly, I would definitely disagree with that, because working with emergent language, it's very, in a way, demanding, and it's very active process, because there are like a lot of things that we are taking care of, we make sure, so what is done to that emergent language, because I remember I had so many times, especially in some language school when I used to work there, when you correct or you give this reformulation to the student, I don't know, but the student wouldn't even, for example, even repeat it and just go further and then repeated this mistake again, and you drill it and you repeat it, and it just doesn't happen, I would say. So what is done, how students are taking it in, how they're responding to this, are they correcting? So it's like two-way street, I would say. And here, I believe that it's important to give your students a purpose to communicate and real life task about real life topics, because thank you very much, by the way, to all teachers who filled out the Google form that was like before this webinar, because there was a question, what do you struggle with when with improvisation, what are the struggles? And a lot of teachers wrote that it's to engage students, to keep their interest. And I believe that, I don't know, not even I believe, but from my experience with students, when I started to give them real life tasks and talk about real life topics, I just didn't have to deal with this problem anymore. It was eliminated organically, because it was about them and they were really motivated, I would say, and they were really interested to talk about it. They no longer needed to talk about some people, I don't know, from the course book or maybe something, and then somehow try to understand how to connect all those structures or whatever to their lives. So it just disappeared, I would say. Let them experience this gap in knowledge, like really feel it. Oh, I can't say that what I want. Yeah, it's a little bit uncomfortable, but we want them kind of to experience it and to notice this gap. And then we provide this necessary assistance and support to get over those gaps, or by reformulation or some other ways. And of course, we write it down, review, recycle, and encourage them to use this emergent language in some new context, of course, and monitor their uptake, how it's going after, for example, like a few classes, of course, so we can monitor their progress, of course, in this way. Record your classes. So sometimes I just record my class, just a piece, maybe like the beginning or the end or the whole class, and just see how am I doing all these processes, and reflect on, I would say, like a number of things. So for example, you can reflect, so what did it feel like for you to give more control to your student? And how did it feel for you not knowing exactly what emergent language would come up, right? So it's like I don't know, was it like an adventure for you, or was it like, oh my God, what's happening? No, I want to stick to my lesson plan. And what emergent language came up? What did you choose to focus on exactly? And how did you reformulate? So what was like your version, right, of some reformulation? Was it exactly at that moment? Was it live? Was it delayed? So you can, I would say, explore your style, explore your way of teaching, and what yeah, and once again, this emergent language you can explore just in the beginning of the class, or maybe there is some moment during your class. So it can be really to absolutely any extent when you can, I would say, dive into that, right? All class or just a part of it, also depending on how rigid your restrictions are about the curriculum and so on. And also we can ask our students for feedback. How did they feel about working with this emergent language, with this, I don't know, whatever we were working on, right? And I actually do it every class. At the end of the class, for 5 minutes, I ask them about like general overview. So how was it for them? How did they feel? And and of course, what exactly they learned, remembered, clarified for themselves. And I would say that it can be pretty insightful from time to time. All right. What I also wanted to share, recently I was surfing on Instagram, and there are great guys at Learning English. And there was a post by Leo Gomez, about 5 questions to ask learners after they've produced the language. So this is something that we can do before even giving our reformulation. So they say something, they produce some language, maybe it was clear or maybe not so clear, or you want actually to gently push them to, okay, you just used the language that you already know. How about you a little bit extend and use actually some, I don't know, new phrases that we learned with you and so on, because our task with students always to be this gentle pusher toward the extension of their language. So these are the questions. And also if we want to clarify the meaning, what exactly they were saying, because maybe sometimes it wasn't so understandable and wasn't so obvious. So what you're saying is, and you paraphrase, and is that, yeah, do I understand correctly? Could you say that in another way? Could you share an example Are you able to explain that a little bit further? Would it be possible for you to rephrase your statement? And yeah, it gives a chance to student to once again to do the work and to use the language. And then we can, of course, as they have done this work, we can help them with some also like a better way of saying, or like an alternative, not even a better, but just an alternative way of saying, right? So we're expanding helping to expand their vocabulary and so on. All right, so I would like to share with you a few cases that I promised, how I work using this improvisational moments and how I'm working with this emergent language. And here is the class with my A1 student. He's 65, and when he came, he said that he never learned English. He never really needed to learn English in all his life. And he decided to start for like a number of reasons. And he just came and said, can we just start with an alphabet? So it's very interesting how students, in a lot of cases, what I noticed, they come and they tend to underestimate their abilities, or they just, yeah, don't really can understand what they're actually well, basically underestimate their abilities. So here it is. So we just started. This was like the very first class. We just started. Hi, how are you? Hi, I'm fine, thank you. So tell me about yourself. He was like, tell me about yourself. Like, okay, so your name and so on. And he's okay. My name is such and such. I'm from Ukraine. I have 4 kinder. German. So here was the basically his gap in the knowledge, and I assisted. So I said 4 children. Oh yes, I have 4 children. Of course, I wrote it down and everything, so he would see it actually just like in front of him. 1 daughter and 3 sons. We worked immediately on the correct pronunciation. I love very much. I love them very much. Okay, I love them. And here we worked on correct pronunciation of the sound the. I'm 16, no, 65. Oh, amazing. And I am an engineer. So that was like a little beginning of that. And basically at this point, we worked a little bit with this verb to be. So why actually we need that in a sentence? I am an engineer, and how to create the statements. What I noticed that with beginners, it's more challenging for me, to be honest, to work with this emergent language, to improvise and all, because all this language is like in front of them. Everything is like, is basically new. And it's, I don't know, in my experience, it's easier to overwhelm them with all this new information, all these constructions. So it's really, really important to give that into some digestible portion. So we just took, for example, how he could navigate with this verb to be in statements. And then I asked him, okay, so could you please repeat again what we basically created? So when he talked a little bit about his family, which was like really important for him. So once again, like, and try not to look. And once again, he started to like produce this little text that I have just shown you again. And it was, of course, much better. And he felt like, whoa, I can already even like say something. And it gave him some inspiration. And for the next time, in order to create the continuation of this task and for recycling and repeating, I asked him to bring his real photos of his family, so he could say like about their age, about their professions. Yeah, using, of course, all this. I don't know. My wife is, I don't know, a marketer and so on. So yeah, it was basically already using this and like repeating this. and what we worked on this particular lesson, and like, of course, expanding and building on that. It actually fascinates me because yeah, as you can see, he even said like correctly, I'm from Ukraine, but he said like I engineer, because once again, it proves that even that he didn't learn English before, he was exposed to English everywhere, and he heard all these phrases like I'm from Ukraine or something, right? So he basically had already that passive knowledge, right? And when we started to talk, so this knowledge just started to come up, and we acknowledged that, we took it, and we started to build on that. Yeah, so this is an example with my beginner student. Here is an interesting case. I had a consultation with a teacher from Algeria, amazing, brilliant teacher. And she said that she had such a situation that she works with with students, teenagers at that particular class. There are like 30 teenagers, and she has really rigid curriculum, and also her supervisor comes from time to time. So there is not much space for improvisation. So we started to think how we can integrate it, right, into her into her class, at least that particular one. So she came, so she said that, okay, I have in mind such an idea that it's going to be an April Fool's Day pretty soon, and I can bring some text, some interesting text about jokes, about, you know, how, I don't know, people maybe spent this funny day in maybe different countries or something like that, so something interesting for them. So they can read it, discuss it. Then she can create, for example, some, like a presentation about past simple, past continuous, or some kind of past tenses. And then it's like because it's a writing lesson, so they can actually write about this day. And we started to spin around a little, like different ideas. And I suggested, okay, what about if you ask your students to bring some real photos and tell about, about jokes and pranks that happened to them. So on this photo, it should be basically like some, I don't know, like prank, and yeah, so they could be kind of talking about it. Of course, they did that. And she said that it was a pretty live discussion because, well, once again, it was about like their life, and it really happened, and it was like really funny. So they discussed it, what we can do, right? Because it's like a huge, big class. Of course, we create some smaller groups. They talk about these real photos and like about their real life stories. So you move around and tune in into the different groups, write down some interesting emergent language that comes up. And then, well, there is also an option. You can see what really they're struggling with. It actually may be about past tenses, of course. Of course, it can be some vocabulary moments, right? So as they do that, of course, you can talk about, like, give feedback on their content first. So let them talk about all this, I don't know, what their partners told them about and so on, so they can share the stories. Then you can put, for example, on the board some particular moments that you wrote, or you, of course, you can go with your presentation that you already had, why not, about past tenses, of course, or you can go with these moments that occurred and discuss them, and let them write it down. Exactly. So, okay, so it can be a lot, like literally anything, vocabulary or some grammar point. You can, in her case, I think she showed also the structure of the story, how to write a story, and they wrote a story about this joke that happened to them, and they did a lot of cute drawings and everything. So it was Yeah, it was a really fun lesson. So it's just like one of the ways how you can play around with these ideas. So it's enjoyable and for you and for your students. I don't know, for me, it's always fascinating to get to know about some interesting facts about my students. Yeah, and they also sometimes they're really interested to get to know about and this can also turn into a lesson when you tell about your story, and then you can build a lot of different activities on that. Okay, so let's move to one more. Right now, I actually work more with business English clients. This particular client, she specializes in design. And what we did, so she came and as almost like all my students, they come, oh, I want to speak fluently, whatever that is. Because when students tell you that they want to speak fluently, it can mean so many things to so many different people. So it's really important to clarify exactly what they mean by that, by asking questions further and further. So you really go like closer to the core of what they really would like to know, to be able to basically about their motivation, about their like real goals that really tick them and keep them going. So in her case, she said that, okay, I want to be good at communicating with foreign clients and doing business with them. It's more interesting for them, it's more profitable. So yeah, I want to do that. We can always set a challenge as a variant. So we just did with her that in 4 weeks, she will get a new client. Well, she has like intermediate level. So for her, it's pretty much doable. So of course we discuss if it's like something that she's okay. She agrees and she loves that. Yeah, so that's what we did. It's not necessary, but it can bring this extra motivation, some extra spice. So she chooses the topics, usually the skills to develop. Of course, we discuss, okay, I need to be able to introduce myself, what I'm doing, how I'm doing. So like all the steps, exactly how she's doing in her native language. She's also interested in Atomic Habits by James Clear, but this is something, once again, like in terms of her interests. I found this really helpful with a lot of my students, because even learning a language, it's about creating habits and how to create a habit in a smart and accessible and joyful way. Because, guys, at the end of the day, joy is what I would say one of the ingredients in learning that is really, really important. I remember I even did some post, I believe like on some social medias, and I asked teachers, so what is the definition of a successful lesson? And teachers gave a lot of different ideas, amazing ideas, and absolutely every one of them, they mentioned this ingredient, joy, that it's joyful for you, it's joyful for your students. And I believe this is something that we shouldn't be overlooking and paying attention to. Of course, we do a lot of role play with her. So she writes some situations, right, that she might potentially have with these clients, questions that usually, they all ask basically. And we just, of course, I check everything. I give my feedback. We discuss these gaps that she has in grammar and vocab, and we write everything down and we train. So these are, I would say, some of my just like a little tiny part, I would say, of examples of how I work with that. Of course, I don't know, I have also a lot of examples by my colleagues. I also want to tell you about one more person here in Toronto. His name is Anish Daya. I hope I pronounce it correctly. He is a fantastic coach, and what he did is that he made Toronto, right now in Canada, Toronto. So she like made it Toronto as the classroom. And he takes his students to different locations here, and he basically makes it an experiential learning. So of course, some language comes up, all this emergent language. He has, of course, some focused phrases already kind of pre-prepared, I would say. So it's like both. And yeah, and it's not just online we are trying to create, you know, these situations, but for example, they go, like the person loves baseball, they go to this baseball place where people are playing baseball, and he kind of gently pushing his students to talk, exactly, already create a conversation with fans, with baseball players, or maybe with, I don't know, like to go to different locations. And okay, if you need to ask a direction, well, you just go out and you ask for directions. And then, of course, so they work on that. So it's like another amazing, I would say, example that I also really wanted to share with you. Okay, so that's basically it as for now. So I really I'm grateful for your attention, and if you have any questions, we can definitely look into that.
Brilliant. Thank you, Maria. That was fantastic. That was very inspiring, actually. Thank you very much. You could probably have a rest and have a drink of water now. But that was great. Thank you very much. We've had lots and lots of questions.
I love questions.
Okay, great. Well, let's go through some questions. And I've been looking at the questions in the chat that have been coming through, as well as the ones in the Q&A. Can you see the Q&A ones as well? I think you can.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So should we go to this first one from Ermi? It says, do you believe, or would you believe that you need excellent subject knowledge in order to improvise effectively? I believe it can be difficult for a newer teacher, but maybe you can burst that belief for me.
Oh, what an amazing question. Honestly, I thought myself that I needed excellent subject knowledge in order to improvise successfully. And I was like honing, like a mad person, honing my skills and like, I don't know, polishing all the structure and everything. I did the CELTA course and everything. And I was actually further and further from my students. I was like, what is happening? Why it happens? So it was really difficult for me. And at some point I had this burnout.
Right.
Because I just couldn't handle, okay, what's happening? I'm getting all this, I don't know, webinars and everything. I'm getting all this knowledge. I'm becoming like super powerful student. I mean, well, student, yes, and teacher. But it just like doesn't really so much translate into classes themselves. And honestly, now I strongly see it and strongly believe that when like even like if you're the newest teacher ever, you come to the classroom and you with that knowledge that you have, but you already kind of go into some improvisation and give yourself that space and that trust, and also kind of go a little bit with your students, even a little bit, you know, even to some extent, it can save a lot of souls from burnout. I wish I had done that myself, you know.
So it's definitely something for improvising your lessons is definitely something for newer teachers as well as experienced teachers.
Yes, yeah, you know, it came to my mind an interesting parallel. When our students come to us, we always, so they want to speak. Usually speaking is the most vulnerable and desired skill. And I don't know, I always tell my students, guys, in order to speak, you actually need to speak with mistakes, everything. Yeah, you're still learning, but you need to speak. So how do we learn how to improvise if we don't do it? Yeah, exactly. From the beginning, you know, we just like start doing it. Yeah, of course there will be some bumps and whatnot, but also I think there will be some encouragement for students, because they will be, oh, she listens to me. I can tell her more.
And so I like your your comments just earlier about joy in teaching as well. I thought that was a really good point. Something that as teachers we can easily forget actually, and can possibly lead to the kind of burnout that you're talking about.
Yeah. I had that experience. I literally forgot about joy in learning. So yeah, guys, don't do that. Don't make that mistake. Well, that is a mistake.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to try and go through some more questions. We've got lots. I don't know if we're going to get through them all, but we've got another one from Alessandra, who says, what's the importance of visuals in the context of improvising or teaching? Can they constitute a good starting point for discussion? Also encouraging emergent language. Thanks for that question, Alessandra.
Thank you. I remember that I used to use a lot of visuals that were not really connected to real life of students. So for example, I want to talk about trips, and I show them the photo of Rome, Ukraine and some other, and they're like, oh, they start discussing and so on. And it's like, it can be like good discussion and everything. But what if I show like, I don't know, my trip, for example, or I ask them to show like visual of, if they want to, of course, if they are like, okay with that, right? Maybe it's like a class or something. Usually they are, I don't know. I haven't had such a situation. They're like, oh, no, it's personal life or something. Yeah, so I don't. But anyway, we got to be also mindful of that. So kind of to use the visual, but also use the visual that is like really related to their lives. And it doesn't necessarily also like, I'm getting a lot of questions. Oh, Dogme, it's like, isn't it too much about personal life, you know? But it can be just about personal opinions, right? About different things, like about literally anything. Like now I see, for example, a squirrel climbing the tree, like literally. And, yeah, so, and I can just like, I don't know, I talk about like, I can share this like the view, right? And I can ask, oh, can you show like your view? What about like, what do you think about like Canada is really I don't know, kind to animals. They're like really very careful. So and we can discuss that like a personal opinion. It doesn't necessarily that, okay, are you married? No.
Yeah, so some connection with the students, but it doesn't have to be like super personal stuff.
Yeah. I had to remember, it's very, I mean, I'm not into dinosaurs, but at some point I went to I went to the museum. I took a photo of a huge dinosaur, you know. I just like found it amusing. I came, I had this class with my teens, and I just showed them dinosaurs, and like one student, oh my god, dinosaurs. I'm like I completely didn't think about that. And we had like the whole class talking about dinosaurs. It was brilliant.
But and that was with teenagers.
Yeah.
Oh wow, that's great.
Yeah. So, but it was literally funny, you know. Like you never know. You got to explore.
Yeah. Well, we've been talking about speaking skills a lot actually, and there's a question from Hussein, who says, "Is improvisation all about the speaking skill?"
Right. I would say that, and also Dogme ELT, it is based on conversation. Yeah, that is true. It is based on conversation, because honestly, gap fill tasks and everything, they can do at home. That's what I give them, you know, like for home, you can do that on your own. Yeah, when we have this quality time, let's actually base first of all on this thing that you actually desire the most, because all this reading, watching, they do on their own. Of course, I give the guidelines, of course we discuss it, how to do that, but during the class, I mean, I can do it to some like little extent, but I pay attention first of all to the speaking, because on their own, I mean, yeah, you need somebody usually. I mean, I can talk to the plant, but but it doesn't respond. So, you know, it's like
okay. So you're focusing on mainly speaking in class, and but I think, as you said before, that you're talking about improvisation being a part of the class, not necessarily the whole the whole class. So
yeah, like it can be absolutely to any extent. It can be just a little bit, just starting, how are you, how was your weekend, and then you still, okay, I go to my lesson plan, and it's fine. And then, for example, as you go, something comes up, I don't know,
Yeah.
even externally something comes up, and you're like, oh, let's discuss a little bit that, right? And you discuss it.
Yeah.
So you can kind of, once again, it's like a dance. Right now, I have this opportunity, I would say, with this company for which I work, and like myself, like self-employed, I have this opportunity that I can do it like for the whole class. But not for the whole class, with some, some points that we anyway like some structured point, but we can definitely do it like to absolutely any extent, and give ourselves like any kind of freedom in that.
Definitely. So I was looking at the comments while they were coming through, as well as the questions that are in the Q&A, and there were a few in the comments. There were a few people talking about different ways of reflecting, and whether they felt comfortable recording themselves, or whether their students would feel comfortable with being recorded. What's your kind of experience of that?
Right. Well, because I do it just for myself, I tell them, guys, yeah, this is just for me. So I'm just like looking as a third person, how I'm doing, the skills, because it's basically for, like a better quality for our classes. I haven't had such a situation that they said no or something. Like, okay, I work also more with individual students. Yeah, sometimes I have groups, but even with groups, yeah, they like, no, we don't mind. I don't do it like every class, just, from time to time when, I feel like, okay, how am I doing? Of course, I can already, even like after the class, I already can kind of sense, okay, and reflect. Okay, that was, that was good. That's interesting. Yeah, kind of to think, how I can kind of improve or something. But from time to time, it's usually pretty fine. And it's, it kind of energizes them also, like to pull themselves together,
Okay, that's interesting. I like Melissa's suggestion of just recording yourself on your mobile, not necessarily a video, just recording yourself, so much less intrusive. Okay, there's a question here about how can you check learners' intake or uptake in very large classes, more than 100 pupils. Now that is a very large class, and there was some comments during your presentation as well about from people with very large classes. I've never taught a class that size. I'm imagining groups, lots of group work, but I don't know, do you have any advice for that kind of situation?
Interesting. Honestly, I only had once, actually, like literally one class of 100 students, but it was like a speaking conversational class. I basically just gave all these topics that they were talking about. So no, it was like completely different. It wasn't like full language class. Some not really. So it's more like conversational class, just with some pre-prepared questions. And then I was just going around and just like tuning in and giving some suggestions. So basically that's it. So it's a little bit hard for me to give some piece of advice, because I haven't really experienced like such huge classes, Yeah. We talked with another colleague of mine, and she taught, pretty big class, and also like different levels. That is interesting. Multicultural, sure, but also multi-level. So her advice and how she was like monitoring, of course, she was like creating some smaller groups, right? And it was also like really relevant, all these real tasks, real talks, topics. And also she was letting like students with higher levels help those, so they were like helping basically each other. And I loved that moment, right? And she was like just basically more like on the background listening. Yes, if something she would correct, with a higher level, right? Or
Yeah.
they would ask her something, but it was like such an interesting flow, so yeah,
it'd be great to know from in the chat, anyone who's watching, anyone who's joined us, if they've had that situation and how they've dealt with it. Maybe they can give us some ideas. I'd love to know.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be fantastic, because honestly, I can imagine like 100 students and you are managing and monitoring their uptake and everything.
Yeah,
Oh my God.
Yeah. So, and I think
Amazing.
we've only got a couple of minutes left. So I'm just going to go for one more question, if that's okay.
Sure.
From Puyan, can you suggest any specific sources to get some practical ideas?
Okay, so you can definitely check out Scott Thornberry's book about Dogme ELT, like about this way of teaching. And of course, I mean, he doesn't particularly talk much about improvisation, but that's what he's, I would say, like implying, of course. Or, for example, there is my book, How to Prevent Emotional Burnout. It's such a long, How to Prevent Emotional Burnout, how to reduce your time prevent emotional burnout. Yes, I did it.
Okay, well done.
Yeah. So that's, for example. Then Richard Chin, his book, if we talk about books, right? Working with Emergent Language, and Danny Norrington Davis. So they wrote it together. Then actually it was helpful for me to go to jazz concert and make friends, with some jazz musician, really helpful. And I talked to them about improvisation.
Okay.
And I also read some books by musicians about improvisation, like, I remember, like Improvisation in Life Art. I don't remember. I will need to check it out.
I've put you on the spot by asking you that question.
Yeah.
But Melissa's just put a link in to the book that you've just mentioned in the chat.
Right.
So
right. But also keep in mind that these are books, right? This is something that can give you some ideas, but also the most helpful is actually go to the class and do it, and ask your students for some feedback. And and it will give you so many ideas. My book is basically based on those situations. I was just experimenting. And it's also like an experimental attitude, when you're experimenting, when you're giving, yourself that freedom, and not, being scared, like, oh my God, it's like I have to be, like strict and so on. Like rigid curriculum or something. But of course, I also totally understand that.
So but maybe there's space for this kind of improvisation within that strict curriculum, if it's limited.
Yeah. For example, like this teacher that I shared this example. So she said that I have this rigid curriculum. So how can we a little bit improvise within that? And that was like one of the ideas that we came up together with her. And it worked. So she wasn't fired. Nobody was fired.
Brilliant. That's the result.
It was a good lesson, because I understand that there is also this financial moment, right? We don't want to lose our jobs and something, or like we don't want that our students give us bad feedback. But that's why we can ask them, and we can always, keep like a finger on their pulse. How are they doing?
Yeah. Excellent. Okay, I've got my eye on the clock here on my computer, and we've gone 1 minute over. So I think we could stay here talking for much longer, but we're going to have to stop. So Maria, thank you very much. That was fantastic stuff. And thank you to everyone who's joined us today. Thank you for all your comments, all your questions. I hope we've managed to go through lots of your questions. Please join us again for another webinar. Thank you.
Thank you.